This universe is not just a stage. Every moment, every encounter, every emotion follows a law. We live within that flow, and now we begin to uncover its truth together. Welcome to the Law of the Universe, where your consciousness begins to awaken.
Title: Escaping the Trap of Common Sense, a framework for true human development. At the heart of many societal and personal conflicts lies an invisible cage, common sense. Though regarded as a neutral and rational guideline for living, common sense is often a relic of past knowledge, shaped by outdated social norms and inherited logic. This makes it static and resistant to change. When individuals become trapped in their own version of common sense, solidified through accumulated knowledge, they begin to impose it on others. This imposition leads to friction, alienation, and division in relationships, families, and societies. Everyone clings to their own, reasonable, standard, causing collisions rather than harmony. The solution is not more information, but transformation. We must transcend common sense and access a higher, universal form of knowledge, truth grounded in natural law. Truth, unlike common sense, is not fixed. It flows, evolves, and aligns with the principles of nature. Only truth has the power to dismantle the rigidity of conventional logic and guide us toward genuine change. One of the most destructive forms of ego is the attempt to control others. True wisdom respects each person's path. No authority, not even a government, can ensure a good life for someone without inner growth. Real change must come from recognizing one's contradictions and steadily correcting them. The practice of self-cultivation begins with identifying one's flaws, not to shame, but to transform. This means sincerely listening to feedback, making intentional efforts, and enduring through consistent self-reflection. For example, someone who finds themselves repeatedly in negative cycles, such as failed relationships, business failures, or legal troubles, must ask, "What have I not yet learned?" If we fail to learn, life recycles the same lessons. You may escape an environment, but without transformation, you'll return to similar situations. This is nature's impartial justice. The universe doesn't lie or compromise, it simply guides us through repeated trials until we learn. Those who become pure, by cleansing their thoughts, motives, and actions, naturally become aligned with the forces of nature. A clear soul can perceive the hidden aspects of others and discern what is true and false. This clarity arises not from intellectual achievement but from inner sincerity and consistency. In contrast, when we impose our methods or judgments on others without understanding their context, we create emotional harm and social imbalance. Often, those closest to us, spouses, family members, colleagues, receive the brunt of our unexamined expectations. This is not love or leadership, it is control rooted in fear and pride. To lead others well, we must understand their lived realities. Leaders should never impose the standards of the top onto those at the base without adaptation. Rather, wisdom lies in interpreting universal principles in ways accessible and applicable to different layers of society. Common sense is not a universal constant. It varies by person, class, time, and situation. What is common sense to a laborer may not be to a policymaker. Thus, true social harmony requires flexibility in applying standards. It requires knowing one's role and adjusting expectations accordingly. The past several decades have seen Korean society absorb vast knowledge and foreign paradigms. But without developing our own standards, our own common sense, we remain stuck. We must now shift from being passive recipients of global systems to creators of new principles that reflect our experiences and future goals. This marks the beginning of the post-common sense era, where truth, not inherited convention, must guide our evolution. We are in the midst of a human-centered age, one where each person must actively develop their capacity to lead, contribute, and uplift others. True prosperity is not measured by wealth or status but by one's alignment with nature, society, and self. A rich heart, a wise mind, and an open spirit are the true hallmarks of success. We must no longer confuse possession with prosperity. To be truly rich is to understand the world, oneself, and the universe. Thus, the call is not for everyone to become enlightened sages overnight, but to steadily remove their own contradictions. Each small step toward inner clarity allows the truth to enter. And truth, once received, empowers. As we move into the future, let us remember, The era of passive conformity has ended. The era of conscious transformation has begun. Those who seek to live rightly, serve others, and remain humble will become the builders of a new world, a just, wise, and luminous civilization for all. Escaping the trap of common sense, a framework for true human development. Script summary. We often think common sense is a safe guide, but it can actually trap us in outdated beliefs. When we force our version of what's right onto others, we create conflict. Real change begins not with more knowledge, but with self-reflection and inner transformation. By aligning with truth, not tradition, we move toward harmony, freedom, and authentic growth. True leadership isn't control, but understanding. The future belongs to those who live with humility, clarity, and purpose. Escaping the trap of common sense. A simplified summary. Many personal and social conflicts come from an invisible trap, common sense. While it seems like a neutral and reasonable guide, common sense is often just outdated knowledge shaped by past norms. Because it doesn't easily change, it can block growth and understanding. How we get trapped. When people become stuck in their own version of what makes sense, they start forcing it onto others. This causes tension in families, friendships, and societies. Everyone thinks their way is right, which leads to clashes instead of harmony. The solution: not more knowledge, but real change. What we need is not more information, but transformation. We must go beyond common sense and connect to a deeper kind of wisdom, truth based on natural law. Truth flows, adapts, and follows the principles of nature. It helps us break free from rigid thinking and opens the way to real growth. Real wisdom respects freedom. Trying to control others is a dangerous form of ego. True wisdom respects each person's journey. Even a government cannot give someone a good life if that person doesn't grow from within. Change must come by seeing one's own contradictions and correcting them with patience and honesty. Growth starts with self-reflection. Instead of blaming others or our situation, we must ask, what haven't I learned yet? If we don't learn the lessons, life will repeat them. We might leave a bad situation, but if we don't change ourselves, we'll find the same problems again. This is the fairness of nature. It teaches us until we grow. What a clear person can see. People who purify their thoughts and intentions naturally become more in tune with truth and nature. They can sense what is genuine and false, not because they're smarter, but because they're sincere and consistent. Don't force. Understand. Often, we hurt those closest to us by forcing our views onto them. This isn't love or leadership, it's fear and pride. True leadership listens first, understands context, and adapts wisely. Leadership with compassion. Good leaders never force top-down rules without thinking. They translate universal principles into something that works for each person or group. What is common sense to one person may not be to another, depending on their life, job, or environment. From followers to creators, Korean society has absorbed a lot of global knowledge. But we must now stop blindly following and start building our own principles, based on who we are and where we are going. True prosperity is inner prosperity. Real success is not about how much you own, but how clearly you understand yourself, others, and the world. A rich heart, wise mind, and open spirit matter more than wealth or status. The new era has begun. We don't all have to become perfect. But if we steadily remove our inner contradictions, truth can enter. And truth empowers. The time of passive obedience is over. Now begins the time of conscious transformation. Those who live with humility, serve others, and grow from within will be the ones who build a wiser, more just world for all. Story. The breeze beyond the wall. In a worn-out apartment complex on the outskirts of Seoul, Mr. Yoon had been waking up at 6 a.m. every day for the past 27 years. A retired civil servant now working as the building's superintendent, his days were strict and repetitive. Check the water tank, log the gas meter, inspect the lights in the stairwell. This is how life should be lived, he would mutter. He was polite to all residents, but firm. No using the rooftop. Don't tap into shared electricity. Packages must go to the office. New tenants often found him difficult, even calling him a relic of the past behind his back. Then, one spring, a new tenant moved into Unit 302. Her name was Yuha, a quiet woman in her early 30s who worked at a small local book cafe. At first, she kept to herself, but over time, Mr. Yoon noticed her more and more, especially when she would sneak up to the rooftop to dry her laundry or read a book under the sky. "The rooftop is off limits," he told her one afternoon. She lowered her gaze and replied softly, "I'm sorry. I just needed some air. My room feels suffocating." Mr. Yoon turned and walked away. The rooftop was closed to tenants. That was the rule, common sense. A few days later, Mr. Yoon heard faint sounds of crying from inside her apartment as he passed by. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, a large unfinished painting leaned against the wall, angry brushstrokes, layers of dried tears, and a deep silence hanging in the room. "Did you study art?" he asked the next day, gently. Yuha hesitated, then nodded. "I majored in fine arts. But I've never had a single exhibition. The art world has its own rules, pedigree, awards, connections. I didn't have any of those." "So, you gave up?" She smiled faintly. "Not really. I still believe there's a breeze beyond the wall. That maybe, one day, someone will see my work and feel something." That night, Mr. Yoon couldn't sleep. His father's words echoed in his memory, "Son, common sense keeps you safe. Don't stray from the path. That's how you survive." And he had. He'd obeyed every rule, followed every standard, and never caused a ripple. But that one line from Yuha, "I believe in the breeze beyond the wall," moved something in him. Like a gust slipping through a crack in his tightly sealed life. A week later, Yuha found a small note taped to the rooftop door. "You may use this space quietly between 4 to 6 p.m. Just be careful, and leave it as you found it." That evening, she sat on the rooftop painting in the sunlight. Her brush danced with freedom, her canvas breathing. Mr. Yoon watched from the stairwell, then slowly turned and walked away, feeling strangely lighter. Months passed, and Yuha held a small exhibition at a local cafe. All the tenants were invited. On the final wall of the gallery was a message handwritten on parchment. Asterisk asterisk, "Common sense was my wall. But the breeze passed through. And because of that, I began painting again. Thank you to the building manager, who quietly let that breeze in." Asterisk. Mr. Yoon stood in front of the words for a long time. He didn't cry. But something warm and unfamiliar rose in his chest. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even joy. It was liberation. Final reflection. Sometimes we become truly human only when we help someone break free from their own common sense. And beyond that broken wall, the wind is always waiting. What's one belief you've let go of to grow? Have you ever felt trapped by common sense? Share your thoughts below. Let's grow together. What truth helped you transform your life?